and yachting venues on the Savannah coast, we will attempt to make this one of the premier yachting venues anywhere on the East Coast. And that would mean anywhere in the world. That would inevitably attract new investment. I was meeting the other night with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company executives who are responsible for investing the billions of dollars of Metropolitan's money. And they were talking to me about Atlanta just about reaching its peak. And I said, yes, but you haven't stopped to think about what the Olympics will do for Savannah. And immediately they began to get interested. They began to suddenly think about the potential in terms of new hotels and motels, in terms of what it would do on the ongoing convention industry. Just the announcement that the Olympics is considering Atlanta has got us a couple of new, well, about 3 new 50-story hotels going up. The fact that when it dawns on people that 20% of that Olympics will be in Savannah, it's going to have the same kind of impact on the Savannah area. It's going to give you the kind of new investment in hotels that will bring about an increase in your convention industry, and really that's the way Atlanta began to boom. We found that if we could bring people in for conventions and they liked it, they would come back to visit. Many of the convention visitors would come back to invest. They decide that this is a good place to live and a good place to do business, and the next thing you know, they're permanent citizens of the region. I think we can see that kind of impact on Savannah, and yet it's going to take more than just the Olympics. The Olympics is somehow the focus of people's attention, but really people invest where there's good educational opportunity, where there's good climate, where they feel safe and secure in relationship to their neighbors, where the environment is friendly. And this is the kind of area that one can, where we already have a sense of Southern hospitality, where people already do feel good and welcome when they come. And so improving the education and making sure that we have the kind of secure environment against crime is part of what we have to put ourselves to task on. And again, that's not an easy task, but it's a task that we have found that we can make an impact on. It was largely my wife's doing, but we annually introduce all of our 9th graders to more than 100 colleges and job opportunities. About 100 to 150 colleges and about 50 to 100 job opportunities. We take all of the 9th graders and bring them down to the Civic Center or some big hall where we will have in one room all of the opportunities that are available to them if they will apply themselves, if they will stay in school. We guarantee them that if they will go through 12 years of public education, that they can, at the end of that time, be guaranteed an opportunity for a good job in their home, be guaranteed an opportunity to get a further education, whether they're poor or not. I was with Dr. Knapp over at the University of Georgia earlier this week, and I asked him, couldn't we guarantee every student in Georgia an opportunity to go to college? He said, we really already do. He said, anybody that has decent grades and is willing to work can come to the University of Georgia and get a degree. And that it may take them 5 years, and they may have to have a part-time job in the course of that. But even without scholarship money, it's still possible in Georgia to work your way through school. But we haven't really told that to our children young enough and inspired them to stay in school and hope to do whatever they want to do. But with the help of what we did at the Dream Jamboree, we now have 70% of our public school graduates going on to either college or junior college. And we have another 18% that go directly in the workforce, and about 10% going into the military. And we feel like if we can keep young people in school through 12th grade, then we can guarantee that they are assets to the community. That is, they're taxpayers. They won't be on welfare. They won't be in jail. They'll be able to perform in the society in such a way that they make a positive contribution. I think we can work on all of these kinds of things statewide. And I have enjoyed my terms working as a mayor. It's a 365-day-a-year job. I get criticized because I spend some part of that away from Atlanta. But the truth of it is, that's been the key to bringing business back to Atlanta. And when you add it up, I'm still spending 265 days a year in my office. And the last year that I was mayor, I met with 152 different businesses that came to Georgia to see me about locating in and around the Atlanta area. Not all of them located, but at least they came to sit in my office. That's about 3 a week. And if we could get 3 businesses a week looking at Savannah, pretty certainly you'd get 50 or 75 of them. I think we gave out 160 new business licenses last year. But it is a job of really business development and making the system work. I am always reminded that I don't have any experience in the state legislature, and I really wish I did. But experience in the state legislature, for the most part, is 40 days a year, even for the lieutenant governor. And I did have 4 years of experience in the Congress, 3 years almost, 33 months at the United Nations. And the kind of background that I've had, starting off in the country as a preacher, living in a rural area, dealing with the problems of a depressed area where most of my members were tenant farmers, to being mayor of one of the most rapidly growing cities in the world, to me is quite a breadth of experience. And I really would like to work for Georgia for 4 years and just see if I couldn't apply all of this experience, all of these contacts that I have made through the years to deal with the problems and with the opportunities that we have here in the state of Georgia. And I would really appreciate your support. I'd appreciate your votes. And I would be very, very glad to answer your questions. And if I don't know the answers, I promise you by the time I get to be governor of Georgia, I will have an answer. But I thank you for being the kind of citizens that will take your time on a Saturday morning to come out and talk about the public good. And I think that's the kind of citizenry it's going to take to put Georgia at the lead of the pack as we move into the 21st century. We've been dragging behind in many areas long enough. And I think it's time for Georgia to go to the head of the class. And I think that I can help the people of Georgia do whatever they want to do to make Georgia the kind of place that we're proud to leave to our children and that will lead us into the 21st century. Thank you very much.
You still may have young.
Andy,
Andy, all right. Andy, I am truly an undecided person in this race at this point. However, your talk today hit in an area that made quite an impact with me. I'm told that I'm negative when I discuss these things. There are certain things that have been on my mind for many years in this beautiful community that we have. And that is, well, the main thing, and it's something you talked about, is the lack of opportunity for young people to get a good job. and make a good living and build themselves a good future in this community. Proof of the pudding is that for about, I would say, 20 or 30 years, our bright young people have been moving to Atlanta to seek opportunity and to seek jobs. So what we need here is more good, clean industry and more good, clean business so that these opportunities would be available. Now, your speech made me lean toward you because as I look back in my mind while you were talking, I know that you traveled the entire world and that you know people throughout the entire world. And I know the job that's been done in Atlanta. Now, you're going to have to expand your thoughts as to what you're going to do for a city like Savannah, not just Atlanta. And right now, in the area in which I, as one individual, is most interested, I can honestly say at this point that I feel that you're the best qualified for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hesitate to even suggest that anybody who can mayor the city of Atlanta, I think that automatically gives them qualifications to be the governor of the state of Georgia because they're already doing 90% of the work. But what I would like to hear is I'd like to hear your views on some of the other, I'll call them hot issues of today, and I think those primarily are weapons control, abortion, drugs.
Well, let me start with weapons control. I think you've got two Georgias when it comes to weapons control. I think the Georgia farmer, the Georgia hunter, the Georgia homeowner has a right to have a weapon for sport or for protection of one's home and one's property. I think we have gotten to the point in Atlanta where there have been so many guns on the street that we've had to have some way to try to limit particularly these automatic weapons, AK-47s and Uzis that were designed for warfare that we find in the city. I think we've got to find a way to take those guns, those kinds of guns, out of the hands of irresponsible people. But that doesn't mean that the double-barrel shotgun, the deer rifle, the 22 or whatever you have for quail hunting or deer hunting or sportsmen. I think you've got to protect the freedom of every citizen's right to bear arms. And we should not interfere with that. At the same time, we reached a place where for instance, they were selling bullets that would penetrate the policeman's bulletproof vests. And those kind of bullets and the kind of assault weapons that were floating in the city, we just have to find a way to round up. We have not found it yet, but I think that controlling crime and keeping law enforcement and security in the hands of the police officers, you have to make sure that they have better weapons than the people in the street. Now, I've done that. I saw to it that all of our police officers are equipped with bulletproof vests. We traded in the little 6-shooter for a 13-shot semi-automatic that we deliberately put in night sights, a night firing device that was developed by the Israeli army, but which had not been applied to many police weapons. But most of our weapons are fired at night. In fact, it was down here in Savannah at GMA where I discovered that. The Georgia Municipal Association was down there at the Savannah Civic Center, and they put me in a dark room, and they gave me a gun with no night sight and told me to point it. Well, you couldn't see where to point it. Now, the reason it struck with me was a couple of weeks before, our police officers had cornered a criminal, and 4 of them shot 38 times, and the guy got away. And I couldn't understand how people who are well qualified and well trained in firearms couldn't hit a guy with 38 different shots. But then when you see that at night you cannot really successfully direct a weapon without some kind of night firing device. So we are re-equipping the entire Atlanta police force with night firing devices on semi-automatic pistols. And we've increased police training and police salaries to go along with that. And we put an emphasis on upgrading the police force to meet the challenge of modern crime. Now, abortion. I just think that you've got to trust the women of Georgia to make the decisions about abortion. That abortion is a religious decision, it's a medical decision, it's a personal decision. But I don't think it ought to be a political decision. I don't think that the state legislature or the courts ought to be deciding that sort of thing. I think that's something that people have to work out in their own families, in their own faith, and with the best medical advice available. And I would just want to see that the best medical advice was available to all of our people and let them make the decision. I was in Grady Hospital this last Sunday. Congressman Mickey Leland's wife, Mickey Leland was killed in Ethiopia, and his wife came to accept an award, and she had twins premature. And she went up, and they took her to Grady Hospital. Well, Grady has a very good, I think they call it perinatal clinic, but when I went up there to visit Congressman Leland's two baby boys, my wife was there, and she said, you know, half of the babies, I mean, there must have been a room as big as this auditorium filled with little incubators. And it was, I mean, normally I think of an incubator, a perinatal clinic, as a place where babies are just sort of cared for automatically. But there must have been 50, 75 people manipulating and bothering and doing something with each of these babies. And my wife said, you know, the problem is about half of these babies here were born to mothers who were crack addicted. And so these babies are drug addicts already, and they take so much care. And she began to say, we really don't know we think we have trouble handling children in first grade now who are hyperactive. We don't know what kind of problems we're going to have in 5 or 6 years when we have some of these little babies that were born into the world as drug addicts coming into our school system. And I just began to realize, and my own daughter wrote me a memo saying that she knows I love my granddaughter, and I do. And she says, and this is a child we wanted, and it's a child we love, and it's a child that has been perfectly healthy, but still is almost bankrupted our family to have a child. And both she and her husband have good jobs. And she said the problems we have had with child care, with daycare, she says she can't imagine how ordinary people make it. She's a lawyer, her husband's a preacher. They have access to the whole church parishioners for people to take care of the babies. And they've had all kinds of problems with child care. And she was just saying that it really is a serious matter to bring a child into the world and to bring that child up healthy and normal, and that you really can't do that well unless you really want to and really love the child. And so anytime you force people to have children that they don't really want, I think you're creating children who are going to be lonely, alienated, possibly abused, and be problems on the society. So I would hope that we would trust the women of Georgia to make those decisions. Now, on drugs, almost everything I have known how to do with drugs I have done as mayor of Atlanta, and we have hardly made a dent into the problem. But we made over 55,000 arrests last year. and 80% of them were drug-related. I just decided that what we had to do was crack down criminally on drug sale and drug abuse. That we couldn't wipe it out, but if you confiscate the drugs, if you confiscate the money, if you confiscate their guns, and you confiscate the cars, at least you put them out of business temporarily. Even if they don't stay in jail but 6 weeks. They have to come back out and start over. The other thing is, if you don't continue to make those arrests and disrupt the business activity of drug abuse, if they ever get settled, they start paying off your police, paying off your judges, buying their way into the community. If you let it get out of hand, you have the kind of situation you now have down in Columbia, where there's so much money in drugs. If they ever get a foothold in the society, they could take it over temporarily. And so I have just insisted that we created a separate strike force that we call the Red Dog Unit. And they are amongst our best trained police officers, and they work directly with the commissioner and with police intelligence, and they don't know who they're going to raid until the day they're going to do it. And yet, that hasn't stopped the drug traffic. I go back to realizing that any time a problem becomes a police problem, a number of other institutions in the society have failed. The family, the school, the economy. And I start back with our children. I visit every school I can. I never turn down an invitation to visit a school because I want to tell children, even though I don't make them read the Bible or any particular religious faith, I do remind them that in this country, all men and women and children are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. That they are somebody no matter how poor they are, no matter what color they are, that they're all God's children. And that the body that they have is one of the most precious gifts that anybody can have. They wouldn't put their Walkman radio in the water. They wouldn't pour water on their Nintendo games. They understand that water and electricity don't mix. And they respect the value of their little toys. They don't respect the value of their bodies and their minds. And so I think in school, in the family, and particularly in the church, we've got to help them understand that they are children of God and to respect the fact that they've got a better computer than IBM has yet been able to make, that God gave them, and they shouldn't mess it up. Not with alcohol, not with cigarettes, not with drugs, that they should care for that and nurse it because it can do with them and for them anything they want to do. They can achieve anything they want to achieve. I start out now with my granddaughter. I didn't do this quite with my daughters, but I said my granddaughter, everybody thinks their grandchildren are the greatest. I said, now, my daughter, and her husband, I said, now you all take care of that child. Don't rush her, but she can be anything she wants to be. She can go to the Olympics as a swimmer when she's 14. She can win Wimbledon as a tennis player when she's 18. She can finish college Phi Beta Kappa at 21, and then she's got 20 years to figure out what she's going to win her Nobel Prize in. But don't push her. But any opportunity in the world ought to be open to our children, and they ought to be able to do anything they can dream to do. And we ought not ever be in a position of holding them back. When we believe in our children and they believe in the possibilities of themselves, hopefully they'll realize that drugs is not an answer. Now, I said in Atlanta public schools, we figured we needed to start with middle school, with 6th grade. And I was down in Warner Robins, and the mayor and one of the school principals said that in Warner Robins, they felt that they had to start with their drug education and family education in 3rd and 4th grade. but it is making our whole society more supportive and more informative in terms of helping our children to be what they can be. Now, that's two things. In the middle, you've got people who are experimenting and playing around, and I've watched that, and it worries me. I say we have to do more with drug rehabilitation, but if the mayor of Washington, D.C. can't find a way to be rehabbed, and if a $500,000 a year football player can't shake a drug habit, when he's got all of the best in psychiatry and everything, and we've just seen with a lot of big money folk, we've seen a lot of people destroy their lives with drugs. I have serious problems with whether or not the state can ever put enough money or do enough in rehabilitation. I think we have to try, but I think our biggest hope is at home, in our schools, and in our churches to prevent drug abuse and supporting our police as they fight the attempts to bring drugs into the community. Yes, ma'am.
Andrew, I don't have a trouble with the issue of qualified because I knew you for many years. I knew you before you become an ambassador, congressman, and also and the mayor. My problem is this, that related to the young man who stood up by drugs and also the schools. I know you're a candidate for the governor, but I'm asking the question, if you become a governor, what can Savannah, as Savannah, not Atlanta, because I'm standing here as a mother and got 2 grandchildren in Welfare City now, she had to go up to get a job because after she finished college, she could not get a job here to pay enough to support her and her husband and her family. My problem is with drugs is not so much the pusher, but the purchaser. If you become governor, would it be some kind of bill be drawn up of support and getting the person who transports the drugs? Because some of the people, and I look here at Savannah for a long time, and I'm very active, a lot of the people that be arrested is not the people who brought the drug here. I'm going to go back to Mrs. Nance Cole, who said that she was addicted on drugs, and I hope quite a few you know her. She's an entertainer, famous singer. She said the bottom line is not the person who sells the drug, it's the person who transports the drug here. And the people who sell the drugs is not large enough or not big enough to buy quarantine the drugs that can pass through our city here. My second proposal to you, I reckon it's proposal, because you never know, and I have to tell the end why I say proposal, would we be able to tell our children in Savannah, when they completed college or high school, would they have the same thing that you had said that you done in Atlanta? Would you propose something similar to that for Savannah? Living here all my life, and that's half a decade, and working with Savannah, trying to clean it up in the civil rights, and I think you remember me that. Yeah, cool. I want to say to you, there's so many things on my heart, it is 4 hours drive from here to Atlanta, and I got 2 lovely grandchildren, and as you said, you all love grandkids. I think more than we did our own kids, because we had to work so hard to take care of them. We hadn't the time to spend with our kids as we got with the grandchildren. And I had a daughter now living in Atlanta in College Park who is over the retired system of public school system. And I would like to see her come back in Savannah because I need her expertise here. That's why I sent them all to college to help me. I can't believe that the poor person, and I'll go back to Ms. Reagan, and she's on TV saying that, say no. Well, let's deal with facts, and I think we all, as poor people and working people, should deal with facts. You take a child out of a project, mothers on welfare getting $150 a week, and that child can go out there in a day and get $100. You just don't tell that child no, say no to drugs. Do not sell drugs. You need to tell the person who purchased that drug, put that person behind bars, and then that little small person who's not accustomed to money would not get access to get the drug. And I'm saying big people is the one bringing the drug to the little people. And in conclusion, I like to say, I cannot say what candidate I support because I'm over organization. Quite, I'm pretty sure you know about PAC. This is better known as Lincoln Advisory Council. And I cannot, but I will be inviting all the candidates to have this say so in front of the people. So if you can address some of those.
Yeah, let me say about I think you have very good educational opportunities in Savannah, and I think you can train a workforce here in Savannah, and it'd be the job of the governor and Georgia Industry and Trade to see to it that we bring jobs into this area. And I think we can do that. I think we can help a company like Gulfstream, for instance. And I think Gulfstream is going to be one of the companies that will be the hope of Savannah. I see where they're going into developing one of the first supersonic jet aircrafts for corporate use. That's going to, I mean, a company like that can do for Savannah what Coca-Cola did for Atlanta. Coca-Cola began to bring new business around the subcontractors and the support network. So I think that one of the things I would want to do as governor would be to work to bring jobs to the rest of Georgia, not only to Savannah. Savannah and Brunswick, I think, are going to be relatively easy. But I think we've got to find a way to keep the small towns in middle Georgia, Ludowici, Hayhira, Thomasville's doing pretty well. Douglas over here is doing pretty well. But it's a job of matching a specific company to a specific kind of community and giving those businesses the personal relationships that will make them feel at home. Now, in terms of the drug question, I think the state legislature has got a very interesting set of initiatives that the Speaker and the Attorney General are working together on. Maybe Representative Hamilton would want to say a word about that.
Every year, for whatever reason, the General Assembly takes on a theme, and this year the General Assembly is apparently taking on two things. And the first one is going to be death to drugs. As the Majority Leader Larry Walker said, you know, hopefully at the end of this session, Georgia will be an oasis away from drugs, that you will not want to come to Georgia and deal with drugs. Every bill that can be imagined to deal with drugs has been introduced to the session. I can't imagine anything else that we could. I think we probably have gone, if possible, we may have gone too far. And that's tough to say because drugs are a serious problem. We're going to have to make sure we balance the line so we don't go unconstitutional on some of this stuff. But I think everything that can be imagined, if indeed there's a way to be death to drugs in Georgia, we're going to do it this session.
There's one issue that I want to bring up that you said things might have gone too far. I think it's Roy Allen introduced a bill that makes it a crime for pregnant women to take drugs to pass them on to her unborn child. I've worked at Memorial Medical Center for 15 years, and I do see a lot of these crack babies and pregnant women that do come. I think what this is going to do is you're going to see a lot of babies now in dumpsters and in the corner crack houses. This isn't going to do a good job.
Well, you know, last year we passed a bill that penalized the woman for dropping a child in the dumpster.
Well,
So we already addressed that. I'm not so sure that the law's necessary. We may have enough statutes on the book to address with that, and I don't want to get into that debate about Roy's bill. I mean, that's something you take up with him, but in the same editorial, well, I don't think we're going to get a committee.
Thank you.
You know, the same editorial page that endorsed my bill in DBI told Roy he needs to go back and reevaluate and do some changes on that piece of legislation. So I really don't think it'll probably get out of the committee. Yeah, it'll be in committee.
Okay.
Right.
My question to you, Ben, is you think y'all went too far?
No, I didn't say that. I said there's some of the legislation that's now pending. Now let me give you an example. One of those. I think we're going to work it out. But one of the first bills that was introduced may even go back to someone that had used marijuana 6 years ago, but denied them access to a grapple lawn. That's a little steep. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, I think we've changed the language in the bill now that'll address the problem. That if somebody's dealing in drugs today, we want to be able to deal. But if somebody's dealing in drugs here 6 years ago, it's gone through a rehab program and it's turned their life around. We don't need to re-penalize those folks. We got, that's what we got to deal with. You want to ask me? Or you want to ask?
I want to ask you this
Okay, all
question.
right. But he can guess, but I'll be happy to say, you got me anytime you want to.
Since you brought it up at the House of Representatives, I need to ask you this question.
Okay.
We have to deal with him when we get out of the government. just want to ask one question, because I gotta go to another.
Okay, all right.
My question is to you, and I'm just using this, on top of my head. If I am, elected official, say I'm a city councilor, and I'm pushing drugs to come into Savannah, and letting the little man pick it up, would that be fair for me to actually put out, you prosecute me, and it don't be crept underneath the rug? And believe me, I've been here in Savannah, and I see a lot of that stuff underneath the rug. Can you deal with that?
I think the second part of my bill was, now I don't know if you came in when I talked about it, I introduced the bill the first week of the session that gives the GBI a little more authority to become involved in two areas. One of them is because of the problem we have in Savannah now with missing children. They need to be, as soon as the child's name is entered on the computer, the GBI needs to be able to come and get involved in trying to locate that child. The other one is when there's confirmed drug trafficking going on in the community, the GBI, because of their expertise and knowledge, needs to be able to come in and get involved in the investigation and arrest the folks as quickly as possible.
No matter who?
No matter who. No matter who.
Okay.
That bill's pending before the General Assembly now, and it's on the, y'all heard the word fast track sometime? That bill appears to have been put on the fast track.
Thank you.
And if you make a statement that it is time for Georgia to go to the top of the class, it's my belief that until our educational system across the state has, the critical thing to get us to the top of the class, Harris ran as the education governor, QBE. We have not seen Georgia. Georgia has made some progress. Other states have made progress. We're still down at the bottom of the barrel. Southern County still got problems. What are your plans on addressing that? How do you feel about QBE? What changes would you make? Would you fully fund it?
One, I think you would start out by fully funding QBE. There are another group of things that I think that I saw done in Arkansas. I saw Arkansas go from the low 40s in school dropout, to being number 18 in the country. They did that by concentrating on 6th grade. And the theory was that that most of the kids that drop out get bored. And that means they haven't learned how to read, they haven't learned their multiplication tables, they become discipline problems. If you can catch them at 6th grade, and they put a concentration, particularly of new young male teachers, in at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on the theory that if they could catch them up in the middle school so that they were able to do high school work, they would stay in school and graduate. And that really worked in Arkansas. I would like to see a version of that develop in Georgia. I'm already doing a couple of things. There's Atlanta Metropolitan College has a grant, and we're trying to get that college students to accept on that grant to begin to work with middle school students in the neighborhood, so that you're paying college students to tutor middle school students after school, to also help them with, it's a kind of a tutorial recreation program we're trying to develop. The other kinds of things I would like to do that I think would have an impact almost immediately. I was talking to President Knapp at Georgia and Creasine at Georgia Tech. Now, I know both of them they'll have several thousand little boys in University of Georgia, Georgia Tech for the summer. They'll be in baseball camp, basketball camp, football camp, tennis camp, golf camp. And when my son went, all they did was play basketball from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. So I said, Dr. Creasine, can we make it mandatory from this summer on that all of these kids that come to these sports and recreation camps, that they do at least 2 hours of science and math at Georgia Tech? That at Georgia, they do at least 2 hours of history and English. That there be some academic component. That if you can get the boys, particularly these are the kids who want to be the star athletes. They are the role models. If you can get them interested in academics early enough, you can make it a lot more acceptable for students to work. Now, I like to remind people that two of the smartest people I know Jimmy Carter came up in Plains, Georgia. And one good teacher got him to reading and thinking. And when the records are written, they're going to prove that the problem Jimmy Carter had as president was that he was probably too smart. He read too much, and he worked too hard. And they're also going to show that a lot of the things that he did ended up impacting on the country after he was no longer president. I mean, remember, President Reagan was against human rights as foreign policy. It was Jimmy Carter that introduced that. Now that the walls of communism have come crumbling down, and you see people in East Germany and Poland and Romania singing "We Shall Overcome," now President Bush wants to take credit for this. But all of this came out of Jimmy Carter, from Martin Luther King. And I remind people all the time that "We Shall Overcome" is an old Georgia Baptist hymn. And that's something that came out of Plains to the national. And Sam Nunn, out of Perry, Georgia. Now, Sam Nunn is one of the senators that everybody in Washington respects. See? So what I'm saying is that our school system is good enough for anybody who wants to excel. And we've just got to expect our students and our teachers to excel, and we've got to give them the support that's necessary to help them excel. I've been trying to say, I've been talking to the college presidents because I think QBE just goes up to 12th grade. And we've got a crisis in higher education in Georgia as well. And we've got to find a way to get more resources. And I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't pick areas in which Georgia educational institutions are going to be the best in the country. And I think that's something that we can work on. And as governor, I have asked the college presidents if they would form a consortium with me. And the one thing I want them to start doing is I want us to start reading one book a month together, where everybody that's a decision maker in education would read one book and read the same book and talk about it with each other and talk about it. I was talking with my wife and I said, if we had a governor's book club, and if the governor's mansion was open on the second Sunday night, that anybody who had read this book was welcome to come, and if Mr. Rowan here was the president who recommended the book that month, something in art or culture, he would be the discussion leader that night. I bet there's a big room down in the basement of the governor's mansion about this big. We could get a couple hundred people in there discussing a serious book. And it could be teachers, it could be students, it could be anybody that wanted to come and spend 2 or 3 hours, drinking Kool-Aid cookies and talking sense. But you've got to get people excited about ideas in education. That education, you've got to have the money, but education is more than money. Education is vision and excitement. One other thing that's going to get me in trouble, and my campaign manager and my issues people have not advised me on this. In fact, they advised me not to say anything about it. But it makes so much sense to me, I want to share it. And you should turn and anyway, I thought both of you all had gone when he okay. But see, I think nobody has looked at Georgia taxes really in a comprehensive way since 1952. And I just said, I want to put together some of the best minds in our universities, in our business community, and let them do a comprehensive evaluation of the overall Georgia tax structure with the notion of how can we raise the income to do what we need to do without raising property taxes or sales taxes, knowing that the ordinary homeowner and taxpayer is already paying too much. they said don't talk about taxes. But I think you have to say that you can't lie to the American people over and over again. I think Governor Harris was innocent. I really think when he said no more taxes, no tax increase, he was sincere. But his second term, we had the biggest tax increase ever. And I don't think that was the best one. I would have gone, particularly in 1986, I would have looked at the gasoline tax. I buy gasoline in Georgia. It's cheaper in Georgia than it is in South Carolina or in Florida or in Tennessee. It's also in my own neighborhood. If I buy it at the Gulf station, it's $159. I go right down the street to another and get another Gulf station, and they sell it for $1.29. I mean, there's so much variation in gas prices at the pump, and everybody, no matter what they sell in gas for, so putting a nickel a gallon on a gasoline does two things. One, we're 6.5 million people in Georgia, but there are 15 to 20 million people that come through Georgia every year. It means that they help us pay the taxes when they buy gas, and you cannot get through Georgia without buying gas. I mean, there isn't a car made that will take you from one end of Georgia to the other without stopping for gas. So all of that traffic on 75, 85, and 95 would be contributing to the Georgia tax base. The other thing is, I had dinner with the president of British Petroleum. They just bought Gulf, and the big Gulf station operation in Atlanta. The guy came down to the Martin Luther King celebration, invited me to have dinner with him. So I said, look, what's going to happen to gas prices? He said, well, by 1995, they're going to be around $2 a gallon. I said, regardless? He said, pretty much that's what the world market trends say. I said, well, what would you all say as an oil company about a gas tax? He said, well, the question is, the price is going to be about the same. The only question is who's going to get the money. Is it going to go to OPEC, the oil companies, Washington, or are we going to keep some of it in Georgia? And I think if that's the case, what he said was, he said, the way all of Europe balanced their budgets, he said when the bottom fell out of gasoline prices, and when they went down for a while to in Europe they were up about $3, they went down below $2. Said that in Europe, everybody tacked a 25, 50 cents a gallon tax on it, and nobody even knew it. And they got enough money out of gasoline taxes to balance their budgets. A number of states, did that. We didn't. But if you could, for instance, take the $187 million that the highway department has in the general budget, give them a gas tax for roads and bridges. Let them build the developmental highways, but put them out of the general budget. And then that $185 million that I think you all have in the general budget this time could go to education. And $185 million doesn't do a lot with roads, but it would sure do a lot with education. And so I think we've got to find ways to look at the budget and the way and I'm not going to do anything as governor that isn't thoroughly researched and studied by a broad group of citizens from the legislature, from the business community, from the university community. I want the best minds to take a look and see where we are and make recommendations. Then we take them to the people and see if we can't develop a way to finance our state so that all of the burden is not on the homeowner.
Yeah. Well, I know Joe Frank Harris is extremely disappointed that he's going to leave his administration with QB not fully funded. But there's a couple of things that everybody in this room needs to be aware of that are beyond his control, beyond Andy's control, beyond my control. One of them is we were faced with a federal lawsuit last year with dealing with prison overcrowding. A lot of things that Andy's talking about here today, and a lot of the things a lot of us believe in, if you get to these people earlier, you don't have to want to sit in the prison, but that's not where we are today. We had to deal with that prison problem. The other crisis is with health insurance. Beyond my imagination to how to solve it. I think one thing that we can do, and one thing I'm pushing for us to do during this session, is at least in the state part of health insurance, is to do preventive medicine. we ought to be paying for at least every 2 years for a physical for our state employees. That way you avoid having, you pay $400 for a physical every 2 years, you might avoid paying $50,000 to $100,000 a year for someone having serious surgery. The other thing that we had no control over at all is this problem with the Medicare. Our congressman, not just ours, but the whole Congress, passed some federal mandates down to us that has taken 1/3 of our new sales tax money. Had we had access to that sales tax money, we wouldn't be talking about not funding QBE today. We would also be talking about mid-year teacher salary increases. We're also talking about elementary and middle school counselors. There's one section of QBE that I want to see us take out anyway, and that's the career ladder. It'll never work. We need to be shifting that money to mid-year teacher salaries instead of worrying about the career ladder. Well, those kind of things, those will be on our control. And what Andy's talking about doing here makes a lot of sense to me. You've got to bring in the best minds. One of the biggest problems that I see with the Georgia General Assembly, and I've said this over and over again, and I've got a study committee resolution pending now for us to look at long-term solutions. We too often react instead of being proactive.
What would lottery or track betting bring into the government?
Well, let me just one other thing too, and about the gasoline tax. While he's correct in how he was saying that it would free up the money, the problem I have with the gasoline tax is under the state constitution, it's automatically earmarked to the Department of Transportation. I, as a member of the General Assembly, and even more particularly, I, as a member of the House Appropriations Committee, have no say in how the Department of Transportation spends that money. I don't want to tell them how to build the roads, but I would like to have some say-so in where they build the roads. Those roads are going to be developmental, we can call developmental highways if we want to. But I think one of the things that Andy's driving is this theme today. You can build all the roads you want to, but if you don't have a quality of life where those roads go, if you don't have a quality of education where those roads go, you're not going to bring the industries here anyway. You're going to have a road that goes nowhere with no quality of education to bring those industries in here. We need to be looking at what we already got instead of trying to build roads to go everywhere.
Can I just say something about that? I think that one of the things we could do, if we could not change that, what we did with most of our referendums, we would sort of sit down with people and negotiate the plan first, so that before we voted a gasoline tax, I would hope that I could get the Department of Transportation and the Commission of Transportation together with the Speaker and with the representatives of the Appropriations Committee, and we could sit down and agree to a plan that this is where we're going to build the roads, and then vote. I agree, you shouldn't just have asphalt politics where 12 men who are roads commissioners get together and build roads where they say build. There has to be some input, but I think that we could get around some of those difficulties if we decided that that was the best way to raise additional revenues.
I'd like to ask you a question about some of the difficulties of attracting business. When a Japanese life insurance company announced plans to buy the IBM building in Atlanta, there was quite an uproar, people concerned about it. And as a result, Governor Harris called in the Japanese consulate and said, we think it's time to have Japanese businesses back off from Georgia because of the concern.
Not really. Huh?
That is not...
They bought the building.
They actually didn't buy the building. It was never clear because it was back down. But anyway, my question, not about that, is how are you going to balance this desire to get more money in with this growing fear in this state and around the country that the Japanese are buying America?
Well, I think that the Japanese problem is in part a racial problem. It's in part a holdover from the war. One of the ways I'm going to do that, though, is I think that if we were selling more to the Japanese, for instance, I would say up in Dalton, that I think we can double the carpet exports of Georgia. Georgia sells about $1.5 billion worth of carpet a year. I think in 4 years I could get that up to $3 billion. Simply because I'd pick up the phone and call a fellow that I know at Marubeni who builds or Nisha Iwai, the Japanese trading companies that do most of the building and construction in Japan. And I would say to them, look, you all have 276 companies in Georgia. All your banks are here. We need to balance this out. Can you take the carpet that you're going to have to need for your new buildings, wherever you're going to build buildings next year, I want you to get the carpet from Dalton, from Georgia. Business is person to person. It's not trade negotiators negotiating at the governmental level. It's going to sit down over dinner. Coca-Cola sold Columbia Pictures to Sony. And I happened to be at the dinner where Gazweta and Morita was celebrating the transaction. It was a good deal for both of them. Coca-Cola made a whole lot of money on that deal. And it didn't hurt Sony. Sony already runs Columbia Records. And Columbia Records still plays the kind of music we like. They didn't suddenly start playing Japanese music. They play American recording artists. It's just who has the, the thing about the IBM building was that it just got too much publicity because they paid about 125 or 30 million for that IBM building, and the Japanese were offering them 300 million for it. Now, even though they say the sale didn't go through, something happened, I bet. Because now the new buildings that are being built, the Georgian Terrace, Japanese banks put $45 million in that up front to restore it. The Georgian Terrace was a dilapidated building that we couldn't use. If they want to put $45 million to help Atlanta contractors, Atlanta architects, Atlanta engineers, Atlanta plasterers, Atlanta bricklayers, Atlanta glass finishers, make that a first-class building, that's a good investment. Now, nobody raised any question about the fact that the new building next door to the Georgia Pacific building, which is going to be bigger than the IBM or the Georgia Pacific, is being built with Dutch money. Or the new the new apartments right across the street from the IBM building are built with British money. We have more British money, more Canadian money, and more Dutch money in Atlanta than we have Japanese money. But it's only the Japanese money that we get upset about. And the truth of it is, money is money. They can't take those buildings away with them. As long as we can use them, use them, manage them, maintain them, and they contribute to our style of life, it doesn't hurt us.
Let me just say one thing that part of it. One of the things that I think Georgia is heavily missing the boat with, and I encourage all of us to go participate in trying to bring industries to Georgia. But one thing we've got to look at over the next few years, 2/3 of the jobs we created last year in Georgia were created by industries already here.
Yeah.
We have got to make sure that we keep the pro-business attitude towards our own local firms so they will want to expand. And I'm sure that's something that you would want to participate in too.
Of the $70 billion that I talked about that's come into the metropolitan Atlanta area, only about $12 billion of that is foreign investment. The rest of that is generated within the United States. So we're not being overrun by foreigners.
Mayor Young, I wanted to ask, I've been real concerned about the amount of money that the Klan is costing the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia for police protection. I belong to an organization down here which had a march a couple of months ago, and we were billed for off-duty police. I'm wondering if the Klan can't be billed for their own police protection as well.
That's a tough one. We bill people for when they have festivals. We bill them for off-duty police, but we've never billed the civil rights movement for off-duty police. And we wouldn't have been able to afford to pay it. And that shouldn't deny us our constitutional right to demonstrate. I think the Klan has a right to demonstrate. And I tell you why. And I think that instead of fighting the Klan, I wish the civil rights movement would realize that the Klan is saying, in a way, almost the same thing we were saying. Now, the Klan is saying, poor white people are being left behind. We don't have good jobs. We can't send our children to college. We're being neglected. And they're blaming foreigners and they're blaming blacks, and that's not true. That's not the reason. But they're saying we have needs that have to be met. And I think the society has got to meet those needs. And I said to Jose Williams, I said, he wants to go march in Forsyth County. I said, Jose, all you're going to do in Forsyth County, if you march up there, is bring out the bad people in Forsyth County. I'm going to go up to Forsyth County, and I'm going to get the good people together to vote for me. And we're going to do something. And I said, I bet you got more good people in Forsyth County than you got bad people. It's just that the marching will bring out the rabble-rousers. See? And so, I don't know how we're going to solve this. We have, well, I don't know. We've got a lot of work to do in Atlanta, but I don't think you can charge people for demonstrating. I mean, you can't make that the price of it, whoever they are.
You shouldn't have been billed.
Yeah.
We were charged.
Yeah.
And when I say we, I'm talking about the same group that Professor Rice is talking about. And that brings me to my question. Andy, you talk a lot about your granddaughter and her opportunities. I have a daughter, and I hope someday I'll have granddaughters. I want them to have opportunities I haven't had as a woman. Would you consider proposing an ERA amendment to the Georgia Constitution?
Yeah, I would support any kind of
Would you
amendment.
propose it? Would you make that part of your platform?
Oh, I guess I'd have to. I've got 3 daughters and a granddaughter. Yeah, the reason why is that I have hesitated to propose anything that I wasn't sure I could deliver on. And right now, I think that people get very emotional. Let me tell you what I did do in Atlanta. Half of my appointments in Atlanta were women. Half of the judges I appointed, I had a woman commissioner of water and pollution control. She happened to be the best qualified. She was a young white woman who had been all over the world with her husband. He worked with the Center for Disease Control. She was a qualified engineer that had worked in engineering departments in Europe and other parts of the United States and Africa. And she'd just been passed over because she was a woman. She was in the county. I brought her over to the city and put her in charge of water and pollution control. A woman is a city attorney. A woman ran the whole city. One of the reasons why I could travel was there was a young woman, Mrs. Shirley Franklin, who really ran the city of Atlanta. A woman deputy chief of police. Because crimes are mostly against older people, senior citizens, and children. And I said women are far more sensitive to the problems of senior citizens, children, and other women than most men are.
Amen.
And so we put a woman, she had a master's degree in criminology. She'd been a police officer for almost 15 years. I just elevated her to deputy chief. She was working in the commissioner's office, doing a lot of the work anyway. And so I think that I could assure you that I would see to it that women's opportunities were equal. In fact, the thing that I found was that city salaries are not really very high. And men who I could get a woman to come in for $50,000 a year. Men who had that same kind of experience and competence were working in the private sector for $100,000, $125,000. And you couldn't hardly get them. And we found that there were many, many qualified women who were underemployed, and I just promoted them and let them do the job.
I got right here, bill in my hand. I know you ride bicycles a lot, about the road with you before we brag. They're trying to eliminate bicycle racing on the state highways. We have a problem with that due to the fact the way the definition of bicycle racing is, the way it covers that if, for instance, any time there's an award given, but you know yourself, we give awards at the end of the brag. And,
let me say, that's my representative that's done that. I didn't know.
Your representative.
If you give me that, I will go back and get to him personally. Because he, and I don't understand it because he's a runner and And I need to talk with him about that personally.
If you need any help, I can give you the names of about 2,000 cycles that came into Savannah this year.
Good. Well,
just get him the bill. I think they'll take care of it.
let me say that one of the alternatives that I have sort of negotiated. See, I got the money loosened up for the money for the state highway bill was tied up in Washington, and it turned out that Tom Moreland couldn't get it loose. Well, the guy who was chairman of Public Works in Washington I was in Congress with him, and in 1974, when I just got into Congress, he had been reapportioned out of his district. And he was in a new district where it was mostly Republicans and blacks. And he was unknown. So he pleaded with me to come up there and campaign with him. So I went up there and campaigned with him, and he got reelected. Then he was the chairman of the Public Works Committee, so I took Tom Moreland up there. We got $450 million of highway money released for Georgia.
This came in 1966 when Dr. Martin Luther King led a march for open housing in a white neighborhood of Chicago.
On August 5th, the marchers returned to the southwest side. Mayor Daley had sent 1,200 police officers. They estimated the mob at 5,000.
Martin Luther King was struck in the head, and I remember the reaction everybody had. They all, surged forward, and the march was stopped.
Joining us now live from Boston is Henry Hampton, executive producer of Eyes on the Prize, and with us here in New York, Andrew Young, who's just stepped down as mayor of Atlanta. We may talk politics again in a second or two, and of course was an aide to Dr. King. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Mr. Hampton, first, this is so much different than the first series, Eye on the Prize, because it is as the movement heads north. What made it so much more complex?
Well, it is different, but it is still part of the same story. The movement, which starts in the South, comes north, has necessarily to begin to change its objectives from those of dismantling the system of apartheid and segregated laws to what is still the true battle, which is the battle for economic justice and equity. But it is basically the same story. What makes it harder is it's no longer happening down there, it's happening next door. And it's happening with all the attendant complexity that I think you get when you come to the north.
What did you find as the movement went north, Mr. Young?
One, we found everything was so much bigger. Chicago had more people than the whole state of Alabama. It was harder to organize. The press was no longer our ally, the national press. It was a kind of confusing situation. The economic issues were literally harder to raise than simply lunch counters. Lunch counters, desegregation, voting rights didn't cost the nation anything. The kinds of questions about jobs, improvement of education, would have cost Chicago something.
It also became a leadership question, though, as the movement went north. Who was in charge here?
Well, we never thought so.
You never thought so, but Mr. Hampton, it's certainly in the eyes of the people who were in these cities, in New York or in Chicago, who was in charge?
Well, segregation in the South had created a very clear situation between African Americans and the white community in the South, and the leadership, there was no confusion at all. When you come into the North, you come into a situation where political relationships have been established within the Daley machine. Many black persons in Chicago had an investment in that machine, so it was not as clear that the issue of segregation was firming up one side of leadership and working for the other. So I think there were some complexities that were not as crystal clear when people came north in terms of who was leading. Although the people of Chicago came quickly, I think, to understand that Dr. King and SCLC brought a level of courage and visibility that the Chicago movement needed, and together they joined to really push the issue of open housing in these years.
One of the things that we hear in this series that we didn't hear so much in the first one is the notion of black power. We also see a level of violence that is different. So we want to take a look at a clip that focuses on Detroit.
Protected by police and guardsmen, firefighters faced an onslaught of rocks and debris. Reports of gunfire increased through the night. Police suspected snipers.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Say the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief.
Everybody in that block got along fine. I don't see why this had to happen.
We have just a couple of seconds left. Was there a chance at which all of the movements could have come together and there might have been a peaceful resolution to all of this?
Well, this was not a movement. This was chaos. There was no part of the civil rights movement that ever advocated riots and violence. This was an outbreak of spontaneous frustration, sort of thing that still goes on in Detroit and other places, that really isn't so much racial as it is just an explosion of frustration.
Riots are the language of the unheard, as Martin used to say. Mr. Hampton, go ahead real quickly.
I really want people to understand what they're watching in Eyes 2 is really the transfer, micro-transfers of power. It is really the business of democracy and how one comes to the level of sharing. Don't get dissuaded by the violence. It is minimal, actually, in terms of what was going on. The reality here is that people are beginning to transfer power slowly.
Eye on the Prize 2 on PBS. Henry Hampton, Andrew Young, thank you both for joining us this morning. 15 past the hour.
And a 4-day, 17-city tour of Georgia. 11 Alive's Jerry Carnes followed Young on a portion of that journey, and he joins us from our Athens newsroom. Jerry, how is Young being received?
Well, Kelly, Andrew Young is a great communicator, and people seem to respond to that. So far, no matter where he's gone, he's gotten a warm reception. The big question is, can he translate that into votes? Noontime at Mrs. C's Diner in Elberton, and along with the usual lunch menu, customers here are getting a sample of good old Georgia politics.
How are you, sir? Andrew Young.
As the regular lunch crowd looked on, Georgia's newest candidate for governor helped himself to a plate full of vegetables. For many here, it was the first opportunity to see Andrew Young face to face.
Well, I know he's used to be mayor of Atlanta.
Anything more?
He was ambassador of somewhere one time.
It's one of the big question marks of the campaign. Can Young generate enough support in these towns far from the hustle and bustle of Atlanta? Young says yes.
People in smaller towns tend to read more. They tend to be more informed about more things than some of us who are very busy in city life. And so I think we're dealing with a fairly well-informed constituency.
Yet here in Elberton, many, even some who support Young, admit they don't know much about him.
But he seems like he's a fair man from what I can hear of him.
Young's big push is for an educated workforce to ensure economic growth for all of Georgia. In Athens, he visited this University of Georgia Bio Research Center and announced his support for this type of work.
The ability of business to locate in Georgia is going to depend on the kind of biotechnology research facilities we have, and this is certainly one that helps to make us competitive.
A 4-day, 17-city tour is a rough way to kick off a campaign. Young hopes it will put him in the driver's seat on the road to the governor's mansion. Now, we asked Young if he is physically ready to stand the rigors of this campaign. He told us that he's very ready, that he got used to 14-hour days as mayor of Atlanta, so he doesn't see any problem. John and Kelly.
And, of course, let's not forget the other announced Democratic candidates, Lester Maddox, Bubba McDonald.
Washington, D.C. has done.
The clearest message that Andy Young got from the people of Elberton today is that most folks think it's far too soon to start choosing candidates in the gubernatorial race. And so while he got a chance to shake hands and say hello, Andy Young can't start counting on votes yet in Northeast Georgia. In Elberton, Bill Nigut, Channel 2 Action News.
As Channel 2's Action News continues, a very unusual racial discrimination case.
2, he'll clean up the garbage dumped in our rivers and penalize the polluters. 3, he'll slap big fines on any drug infraction to pay for treatment. 4, he'll stop runaway pensions for freeloading politicians.
These are my beliefs, and I stand on them. They're the same today, and the same yesterday, and they're going to be the same tomorrow.
Straight talk, political courage. Roy Barnes.
For dumping raw sewage into the Chattahoochee River. The report was prepared by the EPA's Inspector General's office. The report claims for 15 years the EPA was aware Atlanta and the state were dumping raw sewage into the Chattahoochee. The report says the EPA did nothing about the situation. Authorities say millions of gallons of raw sewage have been dumped into the river, degrading the water quality and exposing the public to greater health risks. The
river have contaminated the city's drinking water supply. Michael Marsh reports from Macon.
Brian McHale adds a new daily task to his list as manager of Macon's Cafe Nouvelle. Filling pots with water because the water has to be boiled. It's been contaminated, and only boiling will purify it.
So everybody is asking us exactly what are we doing about our water when we're at the bar service or at the tables. So we've got bottled water as well as boiling water.
Dirty water from the Okmulgee River overran the city's water treatment plant, and some of it seeped into an underground clean water storage tank and into city water lines.
We felt the water was safe, but we did the boil water order as a precaution. On the preliminary view of the 50 tests that we have going right
To
now.
be issued later this month, the EPA says it will have no comment until that time. The news of this federal report on Atlanta's sewage problems is playing right into the hands of one of Georgia's gubernatorial candidates today.
Democrat Roy Barnes hopes to make environmental issues the foundation of his campaign. Political reporter Bill Nygett says today that Barnes laid another brick in that foundation.
Well, that's right. And Chris and Don, you will both recall that during the 1988 presidential campaign, George Bush stung Michael Dukakis by traveling to Boston Harbor, where he promised to clean up the filthy waters that Dukakis had left unattended. Today in Piedmont Park, Roy Barnes fired a similar environmental shot at Andrew Young. It was one of the most carefully orchestrated media events thus far in the 1990 race. Standing at the edge of Piedmont Park's Clear Creek, Roy Barnes staked his claim to being the environmental candidate.
During every rain, and all too often in dry weather, this canal becomes a cesspool of human waste. Then it flows into other rivers and lakes, killing the fish, poisoning the water, and threatening our quality of life.
For years, the city of Atlanta has allowed raw sewage to be dumped into Clear Creek and other creeks every time the sewer system overflows. Barnes claims that 8 years ago, when Andy Young became mayor, the city could have corrected the problem for some $20 million, but failed to act. Now he says a solution might cost as much as $1 billion. But for Roy Barnes, today's event was more than just an attempt to focus a campaign on environmental concerns. It was also a direct frontal assault on Andy Young.
For 8 years, Andrew Young did nothing while Atlanta poisoned our state. Now he is running for governor, promising more of the same.
Andy Young wouldn't respond to the Barnes attack today, but his campaign issued a statement, calling Barnes' remarks, quote, a desperate tactic by a failing campaign to gain name recognition and media attention. There's no question that the Barnes campaign needs name recognition. He ranks near the bottom of most polls of Democratic gubernatorial contenders. Campaign staffers believe that the environment is an issue that Barnes can ride out of the cellar. But Georgia environmental lobbyist Lillian Hall says that George Bush's presidential campaign taught environmentalists to be cautious about campaign promises.
We saw Boston Harbor become a political issue during the federal campaign, and of course after the election was over, all the federal monies from the cleanup on Boston Harbor withdrawn. So we want to see rhetoric followed up with action.
Now, during his last several sessions in the state Senate, Roy Barnes has sponsored enough pro-environment legislation to fend off any claims that he's a Johnny-come-lately on the subject. But by attacking Andy Young today, he's defied conventional political wisdom. It's assumed by most experts that Young will win one of the two spots in the Democratic runoff. That suggests that Barnes should be focusing attacks on Zell Miller, the other Democratic frontrunner. So why go after Young? Well, it's simple. By going after the very, very well-known Andy Young, Roy Barnes assures himself a lot of media attention, and he certainly got it today.
Well, aside from the politics of it and the television stunting, if that's what some are calling it, what about these candidates on environment? Is he the strongest candidate in terms of at least what he says, or is he not?
At this point, he is the candidate who has gotten out front during the campaign. Zell Miller lays claim to having had a strong environmental record in the past, but he hasn't done as much to put himself out front. The young people today said that they too have a candidate with a strong environmental record on his hands. They're going to start having to trot it out. What Barnes is doing is forcing all the candidates.
But we have not seen the commercial development to follow it.
Although commercial developers say
The three most important things in real estate are location, location, location.
Real estate developer Herman Russell says if you want location, there's no better place than here.
It's a very unique area. You owning 5 minutes from the heart of downtown Atlanta. You have the freeway in your backyard.
Now, just to drive home this point of freeway accessibility, if you look at any map, you'll see that every road, north and south, intersects at or near the West End's MARTA station. So the people here say that the location is very accessible. And while you see the West End Mall behind my shoulder here, and it certainly serves as a commercial hub, there has not been a major commercial development in this area for 15 years. So people say it's long overdue. John and
Maybe
Kelly.
one day it's going to take off, Renee. Thank you very much.
Well, some business leaders on the south side of the metro area think they may be getting shortchanged by the state transportation department. At issue is the proposed outer perimeter. From this map, you can see the current 285 perimeter. Now, this is the area for the proposed outer perimeter. $10 million is available for right-of-way along the route this year, and the Transportation Commissioner wants to buy land along the north side. The group called the Southern Crescent Boosters wants to split the funding equally between the two areas.
The defense began calling its first witnesses in the trial of Fulton County Sheriff Richard Langford. Neil Craig explains there may be a long parade going to the witness stand.
Richard Langford's wife and 2 children have been with him every day of the trial, as well as his defense team of 4 lawyers. And many of the sheriff's friends and department deputies have now started to take up nearly every available seat in the courtroom. One of the first defense witnesses, an FBI man of more than 2 decades. Jim Kinney is now working for the Langford defense. Kinney's testimony was intended to discredit 2 prosecution witnesses. Retired real estate appraiser Joe Aronoff testified that he had loaned Richard Langford $6,000 to pay his income taxes, but said he wasn't concerned about being repaid because he trusts the sheriff. When the government rested its main case, Langford's lawyers asked the judge to throw out several of the charges against the sheriff. Judge Richard Freeman denied the defense motions. Defense attorneys have indicated they'll probably call many witnesses before their part of this case is over. That list is likely to include a Superior Court judge, a former United States attorney, Coretta Scott King, and DeKalb County Sheriff Pat Jarvis, as well as probably Richard Langford himself. From federal court, Neil Craig, 11 Alive News.
More defense witnesses in the extortion trial will be called tomorrow. Neil tells us the trial is expected to last through the week.
Although it's still early, the Georgia governor's race heated up a bit today. One candidate aimed at a big political target and started firing. That target, Andrew Young. Political reporter Paul Crawley joins us from the newsroom with more.
And Paul, I understand the attack was on Mayor Young's record.
Well, that's correct, John. As the best known and only black candidate in the race, Andy Young has drawn national attention to Georgia's governor's contest, and it was only a matter of time before another candidate went after him. But no one expected that attack to come so soon. Andy Young's name recognition alone could ensure him a spot in a Democratic gubernatorial runoff. But going after the only black candidate could prove politically risky for his white opponents. Most observers figured they'd go after each other first. But today, one of them chose to ignore that advice.
Andrew Young should be ashamed. Georgia should be outraged. His passive leadership has failed us.
Rather than pick a racially risky topic such as crime, Cobb County State Senator Roy Barnes chose a creek at Piedmont Park. The self-styled environmental vigilante accused Young of fiddling at City Hall, while several such creeks dumped raw sewage into the Chattahoochee River.
For 8 years, Andrew Young did nothing while Atlanta poisoned our state. Now he is running for governor, promising more of the same. Calling
Barnes a Johnny-come-lately, Young's campaign said his environmental record goes back much farther. They called the attack a desperate move by a trailing candidate.
If you attack the leading person in the race, the person who has the most name recognition in the largest media market in the state, you're bound to get on TV.
In fact, to make sure his attack got even more exposure, Barnes' campaign hired its own TV crew and offered the story free by satellite to any station wanting it. At last report, at least 12 had accepted the handout. So far, Barnes has outspent the other gubernatorial candidates with a recent barrage of TV ads, all aimed at increasing his name recognition. When asked if today's attack on Andy Young was calculated to grab headlines, a campaign manager said it was just to talk about the environment. John, Kelly.
All right. Thanks very much, Paul.
Still ahead, the shape of things at spring training.
Well, the Braves showed up in pretty good shape, John. I say they accepted the responsibility to work out on their own, and thank goodness we're talking about baseball instead of bargaining here in West Palm Beach.
Also, an elephant that looks innocent enough, but was involved in a terrible incident.
Which would you rather have, a bigger, better burrito from Del Taco?
It's so big!
Or an itsy-bitsy burrito from the other guy?
Look, Mom, it's a burrito for my dolly.
So move up to Del Taco and get a bigger, better choice of 10 bigger, better burritos. Everything from a huge steak and cheese burrito to our new chicken fajita burrito grande. But remember, if it doesn't say Del Taco, it's...
Cheap!
Now featuring our huge combo burrito for only 99 cents on our bigger, better bite menu.
Is this the little boy I carry?
I wish I'd never been born.
Is this the little boy at play?
I'm leaving, and this time I'm not coming back.
Sunrise.
Your son hasn't been to school in 3 weeks.
What do you mean you're okay? You can't even walk straight.
When the distance between how things were going to be and how they are is tearing you apart, call Charter Peachford Hospital and recover hope.
Where's the one place in Orlando where the forecast calls for bright, sunny skies with occasional showers?
Thank you.
Some of the snacks you can buy at SeaWorld are so good, you'll want to share them with a friend. Visit our dolphin feeding pool.
I'm not asking for much, just a good small car at a good small price. Of course, it's got to have air conditioning and automatic. And AM/FM cassette, power steering, rear defroster.
Breakthrough, a loaded Ford Escort with 6/9 financing and cash back for total savings over $2,600 at your Metro Atlanta Ford dealer. Quality people, quality products.
Well, there you go. It never hurts to ask.
It's Red Lobster's new crab and shrimp special. Succulent snow crab. Ah. Plus golden fried shrimp. Delicious. And new garlic shrimp. Oh. 15 shrimp and half a pound of crab legs, just $8.95. Catch it now.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
And try new call-ahead seating. Spend less time waiting and more time enjoying your meal.
An animal trainer is in critical condition after an attack by an elephant. Jojo, a 4-ton African elephant, attacked 32-year-old Bill Pentler when he was moving Jojo and some others to their sleeping quarters in West Palm Beach. According to Pentler, the angry elephant picked him up and slammed him into the ground and then gored him with her tusks. Handlers say it's the first time Jojo has ever attacked anyone.
They always seem so docile at the zoo. Well, let's talk about something a little more pleasant, like spring training. Hit those bats.
That is pleasant. Hooray, it's finally here. It's the first day of spring, and today was the first official day of spring training. You know, it wasn't supposed to work that way, but no one seems to be complaining. Randy Waters is down in West Palm Beach, where the Braves had a pretty good turnout, but not a full complement. Randy, I know you're in hog heaven. How'd the first day go?
Real well. As you said, not quite a full turnout. Lonnie Smith and Nick Kasaski among those who couldn't get here today. Everyone is expected tomorrow. Joe, I invited all my friends to come down to spring training with me, and oh, never mind, we'll talk about that later. But because it is a short spring training, some things will be just about the same, but some things will be a bit different.
We're not going to really do anything out of the ordinary as far as the first week goes here, because you really can't. You know, you have to monitor everything.
A short spring lengthens the odds that Darrell Evans' illustrious 19-year career will reach 20. He needed some time to impress people this year again. New catcher Ernie Witt won't be able to get acquainted with the Braves' young guns.
It's just going to be a learning process. That's why I was a little disappointed in the fact that we had the lockout, because I was looking forward to the 6 weeks of getting acquainted with the pitching staff and the new teammates that I have here, and now it's just going to have to be compressed into 3 weeks.
It changes things for those who sit in positions of power, too.
Well, I think the same people that we were talking to before is going to be more willing to talk right now, because you're not going to see too many of those people that you were asking about in ball game.
Cox has a logjam on both sides of the bag in the infield. The Thomas Blauser and Lemke Treadway decisions should be made fairly soon, but At least the focus is back on baseball, which means the smiles are back on the faces of the men in this game. End of the season, so on and so forth. You could be in worse shape in that sense.
Well, I'm glad there's other managers who want to be in my shoes. That's a first.
Boy, wouldn't it be nice to see a Braves manager laughing in July? Nice to have a summer like that. By the way, should I take that hog heaven comment personally? Never mind. Back to you, Joe.
No, Randy. I was going to clarify that, but we'll talk about it later, okay? All right. Just about an hour or so from the Braves facility over in Fort Lauderdale, the Yankees started their camp with a couple of notables missing. Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield were among those. In fact, the Yankees had only 24 players show up today. One of those who showed was Deion Sanders, whose full-time job is playing corner in the Falcons' defense, and he's looking to make the roster.
You think you can make the team this year?
I'm not going to say I can, I'm not going to say I can't, but I'm going to work my butt off to do so because I really want to be there. I really feel like I can play at that level, and I'm going to try my best to prove it to all these people.
Well, there once was a time when opponents dared to come to the Omni and beat the Hawks. Now it seems routine. The Hawks dropped their third straight at the Omni last night, their 13th loss at home this year. Sam Perkins, he did the damage for the Mavericks in the game late. He hit his last 6 shots, scoring 12 of his 21 in the fourth quarter. Dominique, he had 32. Moses, 20 boards in the losing effort. Look at the folks leave there. The Hawks are 21-34 and still in the fight with Indiana and Cleveland for that final playoff spot. Boy, what a ride it's been for the Morehouse College Maroon Tigers, and it's not over yet. The quest for their first Division II national title takes them to Springfield, Massachusetts later this week, where they'll face Gannon College of Pennsylvania in the round of 8. Senior James Walker says he can taste it.
I was talking to my parents the other night, and they were saying, you know, this is the ideal way to go out with a bang. You know, I would love to go out with the national championship, but like I said, we're just going to go up here, take it game by game, and just do the best that we can.
Well, they say clothes make the man, but do they make the football player? The Falcons have been thinking about a uniform change for 3 years now. Today, they made it official.
You know, you got to play the game. You have to go in between the stripes and play. And I think that's the bottom line. I think really Mr. Smith wanted to go back to the tradition 25 years ago.
Now, in their early years, the Falcons wore black jerseys, Glanville's favorite color. It's simply coincidence that his first year as head coach coincides with the unveiling of the Falcons' 25th anniversary uniform patch, a new home jersey and helmet.
Early success under Van Brocklin using the black jersey alternatively with red, and sometime in the early to mid 70s we went strictly with the red, and we want to bring back the black to offer a change in connection with this our 25th anniversary.
Now, this is the real article, similar to the one Jerry Glanville had sitting on his shelf in back of his desk. Look at this, number 11, okay? It's all ready in case Jerry needs me. I'm there. And believe me, I can catch a football a lot better than I can shoot a basketball,
yeah, right.
okay?
You couldn't get that thing on your head,
Probably
you told
couldn't.
me.
Let me see.
All right, let's see.
No, it's too big.
Wait, this
it's
is
been a
that's
problem
large.
my entire life, right?
I know,
and it's a large.
Head,
What's
that's
that
right.
say, huh?
All right, well, you'll get your chance one of these days, a long time from now, I'm sure. Well, thank you. Well, coming up on 11 Alive, a new gizmo you can get with a certain make of car that should make getting lost a thing of the past.
From the road to the sky, Richard Warner returns with information to save some of your money. That's coming up next.
Toyota wants to make sure they win this game, and there it is, the call to the bullpen. Toyota wants big relief in lease payments, big league savings from two great relievers, Corolla and Tercel. The new 1990 Corollas are warmed up and ready to go at just $198 per month with no down payment. Or you could go with Tercel for just $184 per month and no down payment. Plus, you could lower payments even more with up to $800 factory-to-dealer incentives. Corolla and Tercel.
Get big league savings at your North Georgia Toyota dealer now.
Here in the South, women are all pumped up and ready to race in Ultra Soft by Calico at Rich's. The adrenaline is flowing. You pick up the pace and turn it on. No pain, all gain, all day, every day. Ultra Soft by Calico, the newest fashion in comfort, first at Rich's. And isn't it comforting to know it's just $54 at Rich's? Terrific.
Just for the fun of it, play in the sun of it, a Daytona Beach, a natural treasure that's here for your pleasure, is calling you. You've got your deep sea fishing, speedway racing, and wide sandy beaches to Florida's favorite beach, Daytona Beach. I love you.
Track has a pit stop. Royal Caribbean introduces 3- and 4-night Bahamas vacations.
Osmocote, time-release plant food. Feeds plants continuously for 9 months, so you won't have to keep getting up to feed them.
Hi, I'm Joe Garagiola with Johnny Bench, here with loads of action at Toyota's Big League Sales event. Customers checking the sign. Here's a pitch.
How's this price on the Camry?
He's shaking him off, John.
The manager's hanging out a new sign. There's a lot riding on this. Incentives up to $1,000, up to $705 in option packages.
The next pitch. It's low. Luciano calls it.
What a deal!
What a catch. Score big league savings at your Toyota dealer today.
It's the only game in town.
Stories that will keep you on course on the road and save you money in the air. It's all part of Your Money tonight.
Yeah, that's a pretty big build-up. I hope you can deliver. Let's start with the airfares.
Okay, well, how does the idea of lower airfare strike you?
Great.
I mean, it's always good news. We've got it tonight. Eastern Airlines is trying to lure back more business travelers by cutting fares in first class. They're going to cut fares by up to 40%. Eastern is trying to win back some business travelers that have been flying other carriers since Eastern encountered financial troubles. Now, Delta Airline officials say they don't know yet whether they're going to match the moves. However, how about this? Delta announced late this afternoon that they are going to apply for direct air service Atlanta to Moscow, Leningrad, and Tbilisi.
Oh, really?
And they hope to have it done by next spring.
Yeah, they'll be flying the Friendship Force to Tbilisi this coming April.
Well, this will be regular commercial flights if they can work out the treaties.
Neat.
Yeah.
I see you've got a copy of Consumer Reports, and I know a lot of you read Consumer Reports, and I've always wondered if those ratings really affect how products sell.
Yeah, well, you remember the case of the Suzuki Samurai. They came out with an article about the Samurai, and it pretty much gutted the sales of that sport vehicle. Well, how about this one? A few months ago, Consumer Reports rated shampoos. Which one was the best? They said that Pert shampoo was &1. Well, look what's happened since then. Pert shampoo has vaulted into the #1 spot, selling more than any other brand. We're talking big profits for Procter & Gamble, which makes Pert. The brand was introduced in 1980. It struggled for years until that article came out. Now, for all you Honda owners, make note of the company's newest product. It's a TV screen on the car's instrument panel that shows you a map of where you are, no matter where you are. You'll never get lost again. Trust me, because of this map. It's stored on a compact disc, and it even shows the location of prominent landmarks. What will they think of next?
And this is Honda.
Honda's doing it. First in Japan.
General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, are you listening?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Probably are. They don't care. Well, we shall find out. Thank you, Rich.
Well, coming up, Johnny updates our forecast, and we're going to bring Don Hatcher out of his shell to test his skill at an egg sighting test.
Everything is on sale at Levitt's. Right now, for a limited time only, every item on Levitt's floors has been reduced dramatically. Like these bedroom pieces for only $98 each. Twin headboard, nightstand, small hutch, corner desk, chair, or mirror. Other pieces also sale price, like this loft bed with chest for only $298. Remember, everything is on sale at Levitt's right now.
You'll love it at Levitt's.
Now's the time to put your family in Lumina and get $1,000 cash back. At your Heart of Georgia Chevrolet Geo dealers, Lumina's winning. Lumina handles the spills with Scotchguard protection, the thrills with Corvette rear suspension technology, and Lumina's filled with more standard features, including one for your budget, $1,000 cash back. You win.
Me and my Georgia Chevrolet.
11 Alive knows there's no place like home, and there's no one like Melanie Ramsey when it comes to home. Melanie is a wife and mother, and she's 11 Alive's expert on the products and services that can make your home special. Look for Melanie Ramsey's No Place Like Home tips for helpful information and money-saving ideas on anything from decorating to gardening, improving your home, and entertaining with style. So watch for Melanie Ramsey on 11 Alive, where there's no place like home.
Hey, chicken.
But where's the stuffing? Chicken's almost done, now it's time to make stuffing. Stovetop makes it easy, just push a little button. It's stovetop stuffing for your microwave oven. Yeah!
Stovetop microwave stuffing is so easy to make. Just pour it into its own tray, add water, and microwave. In just 3 minutes, you get that great stovetop taste.
Stovetop makes it easy, just push a little button.
It's stovetop stuffing for your microwave oven.
Problem? Problem. It's that gasoline.
You've been getting good gas.
It's not Amoco Ultimate. So you want quick start, smooth idle, great acceleration? Then give me the good stuff.
Listen to your engine. Clear Amoco Ultimate is refined an extra step for quality.
You give me quality, I give you performance.
Amoco Ultimate. Your car knows, and now you do too.
Hey, how about a drive-in movie? Deal.
Coming up tonight at 11, thousands of census workers take to the streets in an effort to count the homeless. We'll have a live report. And could this dog be barking up the wrong tree? Tonight at 11, Studs, the tree dog. Join us. Speaking of studs.
Yeah. What happened to Flat Nose, the tree climbing dog? Maybe this is the predecessor.
Yeah, it was Flat Nose. It was Flat Nose.
Flat Nose.
Flat Nose.
This is Studs.
Well,
leading us to weather, and
it was obviously was not Flat Nose. I mean, you could tell that. Okay. We've had a lot of requests for Freddie to do the weather, but regardless of that, I'm going to do the weather here. It's going to be cold again tonight. In fact, it will be a little colder tonight than it was last night, but then things are going to begin to warm up pretty rapidly. It was 50 degrees last hour out at the airport. It's now dropped to 46 degrees here in Midtown. The air is very dry. Relative humidity is 28%. The barometer rising, and we have a northwest wind at 18 miles per hour. Now, let's take a look at some of the temperatures that were recorded this morning around the state. Up at Rome, it was 31 degrees. It was 31 degrees here in Atlanta, 31 degrees over at Athens. Some of the mountain stations reported temperatures as low as 20 degrees this morning, but it was above freezing from central Georgia all the way down to Florida this morning. We had the cold weather, or coldest weather, in the northern half of the state, but it'll be a different story tomorrow morning because the freeze warning has been extended for the entire state of Georgia except the coastal sections. That means there will be freezing temperatures all the way down to North Florida to tomorrow morning. And because of that, the tender vegetation out there that's been growing so nicely over the past couple of weeks will need some protection tonight if you want to have it around again tomorrow. The good news is that after a chilly morning tomorrow, it will warm up pretty rapidly. We have high pressure controlling the weather pattern in the eastern states, and we've had those cold northerly winds coming in here. But as this system drifts on across the area, these winds are going to back around here to actually veer around here to the south and southwest tomorrow, so we'll begin to get some warmer air coming up across from the southern plain states and lower Mississippi Valley into the southeast, so it'll warm up pretty rapidly tomorrow. And there'll be an even more pronounced warming trend on Thursday. Temperatures will be up close to 70 degrees on Thursday. Tomorrow morning will be the critical time because it will be cold once again throughout the state. Our forecast for tonight, there is a freeze warning out for the entire state of Georgia, except for the coastal sections, and of course that includes the metro area, and it will be clear and cold with a low temperature of 29 degrees here in the city, and it'll be mid-20s up in the northern suburbs, but tomorrow is going to be sunny and warmer with an afternoon high of about 60 degrees. That's it.
Today is the first day of spring.
Yes.
Also the vernal equinox.
Yes.
Is that what we call it? Okay.
Yes.
And you know what that means. That means that supposedly eggs can stand on their ends or whatever.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And Don Hatcher is going to tell us about that.
Okay. All right, Don.
All right. Well, John, I know
Explain
you find
that,
this
Don.
hard to believe, but there are some people up here who actually look forward the entire year, spend the whole year looking forward to standing eggs on the end. Yeah, for them, it's exhilarating. This old clock tower is the biggest egg timer in the world because on the first day of spring, precisely at noon, some say eggs will stand. There's an old wives' tale that on the vernal equinox, when the Earth's north and south poles are the same distance from the sun, eggs naturally want to stand up. Lisa, how finds that egg-sighting?
We have satellites all over Rome at this very moment. Other weird people are standing their eggs up.
Even school kids egg-sailed in the egg vent just for the egg experience. Not everyone believes this, but certainly there are enough theories behind this yoke.
Cause the gravity straight up and down?
Well, I think it has something to do with the first day of spring because I tried to do it another day after the first day of spring and it did not work.
No one can tell you exactly why this is appealing. Maybe we just like to have our own standing ovation.
They want to stand up.
Exciting, ain't it, John? By the way, we did have to scramble for that one.
Yeah. Does this mean we have a whole year to wait before we have more plays on words on egg?
I'll find something else for you.
Thank you. That's what I always look forward to, Don. Thank
Right.
you very much.
Well, I wonder if Joe has any fun facts for us regarding eggs or
Nothing
anything else?
regarding eggs, no. Tech Yellow Jackets, yes, they have their final news conference tomorrow before leaving for New Orleans, and we begin our coverage from the Crescent City later in the week.
And the temperatures should warm fairly rapidly tomorrow under sunshiny skies. We'll have more on that at 11 o'clock tonight.
That's our news. The NBC Nightly News is coming up next.
We promise we won't have any eggs for you at 11 o'clock. We hope to see you then. Good night.
Alive News Scribe, closed captioning for the hearing impaired, made possible by Delta Airlines. We love to fly, and it shows.
I'm serious. I just opened a line of credit, and bang, I hit the jackpot. Free toaster, right? Free interest checking, free checks, free safe deposit box, free Visa card. Banks don't do that. Crown account made me feel like a king.
Maybe that's why they call it the Crown account.
The Crown account. Yours with a qualifying line of credit from First Atlanta. It's changing where people bank.
When I was growing up, my mother had a way of making me feel safe by lending a helping hand. And she made sure there was a plan in case of emergencies. Whenever I needed her, it seemed my mother could always come to the rescue. Now that I have a child of my own, I want her home to feel just as secure as mine when I was a kid. A message for kids' sake, brought to you by RE/MAX, the real estate professionals, with a commitment for helping Atlanta families build toward the future.
You'll never know what Pontiac excitement is all about until you drive a new Pontiac. And when you do, you'll buy a Pontiac. Grand Am, one of the best-selling cars in the country. Grand Prix, the best-selling car in its class. Bonneville, Motor Trend calls it the best family sedan in America. And Sunbird, one of the best-selling cars in its class. Driving excitement, real value. It's Pontiac, the car you really want. See Barranco, Boomershine, McNamara, John McDonald, Hennessy, or Steve Raymond.
Wheel of Fortune, tonight at 7:30 on 11 Alive.
Gorbachev's big stick in Lithuania, Soviet armor. Is it a real threat? Final arguments in the Captain Hazelwood oil spill trial. And Imelda Marcos. Her trial opens to big crowds in New York.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. Mikhail Gorbachev and Lithuania. Tonight they continue their high-stakes poker game, each trying to decide if the other is bluffing. Whether he's bluffing or not, we can't say, but Gorbachev is huffing and puffing, and he's showing off the Soviet military. At the same time, however, his foreign minister says they will not use force. And Lithuania remains committed to independence. NBC's Tom Pettit begins our coverage.
This afternoon, on the edge of Vilnius, the Red Army's heavy armor cutting across the spring landscape. Again tonight, a Soviet spokesman said this is not unusual. There is a big army base just outside the capital city, but now just the sight of a tank display sends a chill across the Baltic Republic. It is estimated the Soviet Union has 1 million troops based in Lithuania. Gorbachev has said the army would not be used to settle the Lithuanian dispute. But in Vilnius today, as the nationalist parliament renewed Lithuania's claim of independence, many were talking about Red Army maneuvers. President Vytautas Landsbergis.
Today our Council of Ministers have had sent protest to Soviet government
Foreign Ministry spokesman Gerasimov denies there are military pressures. But there are pressures. Tonight, Soviet TV concluded its news coverage of Lithuania by showing a rerun of Sunday's pro-Soviet rally, anti-independence propaganda. But the independence flag is flying all over Lithuania, and so is a sense of apprehension. Since Gorbachev visited Lithuania last month, he has consistently said he will not negotiate secession by Lithuania. Today, Lithuania declared it will start marking the borders of the new nation. Setting national boundaries would openly defy Gorbachev's orders and possibly provoke the Soviet Union into escalating the war of nerves over Lithuania. Tom Pettit, NBC News, Moscow.
And Lithuanian young people tonight are volunteering to serve as border guards for their homeland if it comes to a showdown with Moscow. Today, the White House said the Soviet military moves are a cause for concern. However, in the new African nation of Namibia, Secretary of State Baker heard an encouraging message from Soviet Foreign Minister Shevardnadze. NBC's John Dancy.
Baker wanted assurances from Shevardnadze that the Soviets did not intend to use force in Lithuania. Shevardnadze responded even before he talked to Baker.
We are against the use of force in any region, and particularly against using force domestically.
Even though that sounded less than categorical, a senior American official said Shevardnadze told Baker the Soviets do not intend to use force in Lithuania. After the meeting, Baker said he believed Shevardnadze.
I thought that he was fairly definitive just then, and then went on his way in when he said that force would not be the solution as far as the Soviet Union is concerned. They want to solve the problem through dialogue. He said that several times. And as I've said before, there's no reason that we know of not to take him at his word.
Meanwhile, in Washington, President Bush seemed relieved at the reassurances of the Soviets.
Well, I'm glad that they're still talking peaceful change. That's essential. They've been very good about it. The Soviets have all through Eastern Europe. And that's what everybody wants to see is peaceful evolution in Lithuania.
By quickly accepting Shevardnadze's assurances on Lithuania, Bush and Baker clearly are trying to so firmly lock in the Soviets, they won't be able to back out on those commitments. John Dancy, NBC News, in Windhoek, Namibia.
Baker and Shevardnadze were among the scores of foreign dignitaries in Namibia to celebrate that country's independence from South Africa. Independence came with the lowering of the South African flag and the new flag of Namibia. On hand, South Africa's President F.W.